Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our Dharma with streaming for today. And good to see you back again. Past few weeks, we discussed about the Four Noble Truths. And we understand about what are the basic sufferings that we have and the cause of the suffering, the end of the suffering, and most important, the path to the end of suffering. So in Buddhism, when we learn the Dharma, we have to know that what are the basic teachings. We can't just immediately learn the sutra, which we don't understand what is the purpose of learning the sutra. So if we want to learn Buddhism or learn the Dharma, we have to start to learn about what is the Four Noble Truths. After knowing the Four Noble Truths, the next is to know about the Three Dharma Seal. And it is important for a Buddhist to understand and accept this Three Dharma Seal. So today we are going to start with introducing the Three Dharma Seal. But before we start to introduce individual of the Dharma Seal, I would like to do some introduction about this Three Dharma Seal and what they are and why are they so important. Then after that, we will go into each Dharma Seal individually to have more elaboration. So Buddhist says that for something to be true, it must have the following basic categories or the characteristic. This is as according to the Buddha says that whether he's here or he's not here, when we talk about truth, there are some basic requirements. They have to have this basic characteristic. What are these basic characteristics? It must be universally truth. It's a truth that happens to everyone and apply to all things equally. Means that it will spread to everyone equally, apply to everyone, everything equally. It must be certainly truth and happened every time. It must be truth in the past, present, and future. For example, all people or all beings are born and all people or beings must die. This is an ultimate truth because it is truth not just for Chinese, Indian, Australian, American, not because of their races, but for all people at all time. Birth and death are universal and certain, and it occurs in the past, present, and future. It applies to everyone. It applies in any time. It won't say that it only to somebody. And this person has to be very special. So the Buddha, even he became the Buddha, he also has to experience the birth and death, the old age and sickness. So the Three Dharma Seals are truths that affirm the Dharma and are common to all Buddhist traditions. They possess all four qualities mentioned above, and they can be proven both through reasoning and observation. They are also the means by which to judge whether or not something is truly the Dharma. So, how do we know that this is the truth? We have to observe it. Observe the situation. Observe things that happen around us. And it has to be reasonable. So when we talk about birth and death, this is a reasonable thing. Nobody can avoid it, whether you are rich or poor, whether you are smart or not smart. So this is called the what? Universally truth. And there are also means by which to judge whether or not something is true the Dharma. Teaching which accord with the Three Dharma Seal are truth. And those which do not are false. The Three Dharma Seal basically let us understand what is truth and false. So if let's say there is a group, say that they are a Buddhist group, they teach about the Dharma, and the founder says that, okay, I am the person, the wise one, that I already enlightened, and I won't get sick, and I won't die. Is this the Dharma? Are you sure that there's somebody that will never die? Or somebody says that I already achieved the Bodhisattvahood, and I won't need to experience suffering. Are you sure that this person will not experience suffering? So if a person says something or teach something that does not apply with the Three Dharma Seal, then we better think twice about what this person is trying to do, or what is this person's intention. So these Three Dharma Seals are: all conditions phenomenal are impermanent. All phenomenals are without an independent self. Nirvana is perfect tranquility. In our past classes, we have been mentioning a lot about impermanence. And also we have discussed about non-self. And of course, in the Four Noble Truths, we talk about Nirvana. So now we are going to in-depth to discuss about impermanence, non-self, and Nirvana. But before that, I would like to give some briefing to all of you individually, and then in the next class, we are going to go in depth into each cell. So impermanence, lack of an independent self, and Nirvana are called the Dharma Seals. Why we call it seal? Because all phenomena, all things around us, including ourselves, are stamped with this. There's nothing that does not possess these three characteristics. Another reason that Buddhists call these three truth Dharma seal is that they are similar to official seal that prove documents are real and not fraud. So it's just like in our society, if we want to prove this document is truth or real, we will go to somebody that do a notary and stamp the seal on that piece of paper to prove that this is a real document and be seen by the third party. It is not fraud. The same thing as the Three Dharma Seal. It is real. It is truth. And that's why it's so-called true. Truth in this world and also in the supra-mundane world. It cannot be an authentic teachings of the Buddha. When a teaching is not stamped by the Three Dharma Seal, it cannot be truth. So anybody that say that they teach the Dharma, they have to introduce the Three Dharma Seal. If they neglect one of the seal, the Dharma Seal, basically this is no more the truth. So if something is supposedly said by the Buddha himself, but contradicts the Three Dharma Seal, it cannot be true. So somebody will say that, okay, this is what the Buddha say, but it does not apply to the Three Dharma Seal, so this cannot be truth. And this is saying any truth that is stamped with all the Three Dharma Seal must be truth, whether the Buddha said it or not. Whether the Buddha is here or not, whether the Buddha teach or not, basically the Three Dharma Seal is the reality, the truth in this world. These principles are so fundamental to Buddhism that it can further be said that any truth that is stamped with the Three Dharma Seal is rightfully part of the Dharma. So we need to have some basic understanding about the Three Dharma Seal. When we talk about the Three Dharma Seal, for those people that have been learning Buddhism for a period of time, we know that the Three Dharma Seal talk about impermanence and non-self, and also Nirvana. So some people, when they hear about this impermanent or non-self, they sometimes think that Buddhism is a pessimistic religion because it talks so much about emptiness, impermanence, and suffering. The Buddha spoke of this basic truth not because he was pessimistic, but because he wants people to fully understand the challenge in our life and also the delusion when we look at things. The Buddha knew that once delusion is understood, it lost its powerful hold over us. So when one day our ignorance and delusions are being removed or understand, it will lose its power to us and no more tie us up. Once we see delusion for what it is, we will want to be rid of it so we can be more aware of the things as they are. We can see clearly. We will be aware of what's happening around us. What is the truth? So the Three Dharma Seal should not make us feel despair, but instead be what allows us to transcend despair, transcend ourselves from this delusion, perception, this misunderstanding. So this is the most important thing about Three Dharma Seal, is that understand the situation, the truth of this phenomenal world, and transcend ourselves from this delusion of this phenomenal world. So what is impermanence? Hopeful impermanence. Most people distinctively react negatively to the first Dharma Seal because they think that impermanence only means that what is good will get worse. Well, this may be true in some cases. It is just as true that what is bad can get better. Impermanence is a great source of hope, for it teaches us that as hard as our present circumstances may be, they can be changed. It's just like now we are facing the challenge of the COVID-19. We experience the surge period of the COVID-19. And now it gets better. It will not always be so bad. It will get better. It's the same as our life. We won't be always living in peace. Sometimes we have to face with all kinds of challenge. But this challenge will pass. It will get better. So if we have diligently cultivate good karma causes, then the change will inevitably be changes for the better. When we keep thinking in a positive way, when we face the challenge in a more constructive and more bright way, things will change to a better side, a brighter side. Properly understood, the concept of impermanence can be a great aid in difficult situation. The bad situation will pass. The good situation will also pass. But the bad situation will pass if we don't continue cultivate good karma causes. Then the best situation will come again. So if we are poor, impermanence can teach us that our circumstances will not last forever. If we meet with a setback in our work, it can teach us not to despair, but rather we should learn more skills in order for us to broaden our career scope. If we meet with hardship or tragedy, impermanence can teach us that one day things will change again for the better. In our life, there are a lot of hardship and tragedy, but it won't be always there. Sometimes it is also a force for us to strive for a better life. Impermanence tells us that nothing stays the same. It teaches us that things can change for a better situation if we truly work to better our circumstances. So we need to put in effort in order to build a better life. If we just sit there and complain, will it change? All complaints will change to even a worse situation. Contemplating impermanence also helps us to treasure what we have. Impermanence teaches us to be grateful for every moment of life and to use our time as productively as we can. It reminds us that if we do not make progress in Buddhism now, we may have to wait many lifetimes before we encounter the Dharma again. So, impermanence basically teaches us that everything changes all the time and it changes every minute and second. We need to cherish what we have right now. We need to cherish the people around us. We need to cherish the time. We need to cherish the opportunity. We need to cherish ourselves. We always think that we have time. But who knows what happens next? So when we understand what is impermanence, we live at this moment and we build good karmic action. Anything changes, we are not in fear. Impermanence inspires us to progress, study, and learn. Now is the time to act because the present is all the time that we really have right now. And now is the time that at this point of time we have it. We need to cherish it and make fully use our life right now, our time right now. And non-self teaches us how to cooperate. The reason Buddha emphasized the lack of an independent self is to help each one of us get past the self-centered devotion we normally feel towards our body and the deluded belief that the body proves that there is something absolute self. The keyword is absolute self. We attach to ourself is the root source of all delusion. Because we attach to this body, this self, it produces anger and greed and keep us bound firmly to ignorance. Contemplation of the second Dharma Seal will teach us how to break the bound of self-love. The human body is produced by condition. It is made up of physical and mental components. When conditions bring these components together, a body is formed. So our parents bring in the conditions. So that's why we have this body here. We start with a small little baby, and then we start to grow and grow from baby to a young age, to an adult age, to an old age, and then to death. So when the condition disappeared, the body will cease as well. When I say disappeared, means that the condition changed. When the condition keep changing and changing, one day the body will also needs to say goodbye to us. There is no substantial, existent, or absolute self present anywhere in the body. There's no substantial, the existent, and absolute type of self. When we say about absolute, means that this self will never change. This body will never change. And also when we say that there's a substantial existence, means that this self does not come from the condition. It comes by itself, but nothing in this world comes by itself. Everything in this world has to have different type of conditions to build out these particular things. So from the time we are born to the time we died, all of us change all the time. There is nothing external or permanent about us. Knowing this can be a great help if we find ourselves trapped in adverse circumstances. When we face with the reality of ourselves, when our body starts to change, and before we aware that our body starts to change, we understand about this, it will help us to transcend out from this challenge. Contemplations of non-self can remove deep-seated and painful feelings that arise from the wrong belief that we possess a permanent self that really can be threatened or insulted or defamed. The great stopping and seeing says, when there is no wisdom, we will perceive the self as real. We thought that it's real. When we contemplate with wisdom, the self will be recognized as unreal. Real self means it won't change. It will be always the same. So let's say that we human beings, when we get born out, we are a small little baby. If this is a real self, we will always be a baby. It won't change. It won't change and we won't die. But this is not the truth. This is not the reality. The reality is that we change. We keep on changing. This self keep on changing from physically to mentally. So when we recognize this, then we understand the unreal of this self. In understanding the concept of non-self, it is important not to fall into the mistaken belief that you as a person are not here or that you do not exist. You exist, but at the same time, You do not exist. We exist because of the conditions. Most Buddhists believed and ideas should be understood on at least two different levels. One level is called the mundane level and has to do with how things appear from an ordinary, worldly perspective. The mundane level, whereby now we are in the mundane level. There are trees, there are humans, there are animals, there are tables, there are chairs, there are wind, there are rain. But there is also a supra-mundane level, which is concerned with the absolute and transcendent nature of reality. We look into the truth of reality, and from this reality, we transcend ourselves out from this reality, and we call this level as the supra-mundane. Mundane truths are important because they help us to understand the world we are living and also understand ourselves. We must all learn to function with the mundane understanding of self, because it is a concept upon which our languages and society are built. So the tree is still called tree. Our body is so-called our body. When we use a knife to cut our body, we will feel pain. We can't say that our body is not real. When somebody slaps us, we will feel pain. When we go out to the society, we have to follow the rules of the traffic light. We have to follow the rules that set by the government, set by humans. So, what is the supra-mundane level? The second Dharma Seal is a teaching which operates at the supra-mundane level. This type of understanding is not entirely separated from the world in which we live in, the mundane world. Because once we understand that our mundane assumptions of the world are based on observation of temporary existence, our ability to function in this world will be greatly enhanced. When we really understand about it, it will help us to enhance how we live in this world. The truth of non-self should be used when it can help us understand life, but it should not become something that is used to distort life or an excuse to avoid life. So we shouldn't use non-self to avoid life, to distort our life. Some people, they thought that learning Buddhism is something that they can be excused out from their life. This happened before. But this is not what the Buddha taught us. The Buddha taught us to understand the life. So when the second Dharma Seal is understood, it allows us to more fully participate in life, because it provides a basic for us to cooperate with other sentient beings, including ourselves. Knowing that all phenomena lack an independent self teaches us to get along with others, because it clearly shows that we are sustained by many conditions, and others are too. In the same way that we need others, they need us too. We are not as important as what we think. Our importance basically comes from the people around us. And the people around us, their importance also comes from us. So Buddhism places great emphasis on the welfare of all sentient beings. The Buddha spent 49 years teaching the Dharma, so none of us should believe that the truth of non-self is a reason to abandon other beings for a life of complete seclusion. On the contrary, the second Dharma Seal is a reason to become involved in the community and live among others sentient beings. When we see others as ourselves and ourselves as part of a much larger whole, then and only then we will have fully understood the second Dharma Seal. So non-self is not a pessimistic attitude. Non-self is supposed to be a very positive attitude. When we understand the reality of ourselves, when we understand the conditions arises, that's why there is a self, and also the conditions arises that then that is other people's self, then we are more or less, we are the same. We are important, at the same time we are not that important too. And when we think of that, we are able to coordinate with the people around us. We will have a better understanding of other people. When somebody do something to me that hurt me, if I do the same thing to another person, that person will get hurt too. Then why do I need to do it? And next, Nirvana. Nirvana is the ultimate refuge. Most people believe that Nirvana is attained only after death. Actually, Nirvana is beyond birth and death. It is the state where the attachment to self and the phenomenal is extinguished. The state where all affliction and defilements are eliminated, and the state of liberation from the circle of birth and death. It is not a place, it's the state. In the same way that a criminal loses his freedom by being arrested and cuffed, so too are the sentient beings bound by the chain of greed, hatred, and ignorance. The Dharma can liberate us from this defilement and allow us to attain Nirvana even when we are alive. Life is like a turbulent ocean with crashing waves coming one after another. A lot of challenge, non-stop challenge. The continuous movement of the ocean exemplifies the impermanence of all phenomena. All challenge comes and all challenge will go. And this is phenomenal world. But if we can look at the waves through the eyes of the Buddhist sage, we can see that although the waves are turbulent, the nature of the water is to be calm. Likewise, life is an endless circle of birth and death. But our true nature is the state of perfect peace. Thus, if we want to attain the liberation and the tranquility of Nirvana, we must realize it's in the impermanence and the non-self of all phenomena. In this phenomenon, we have a lot of suffering and a lot of challenges. This is the truth of this phenomenal world. But also, the truth of this phenomenal world is impermanence and non-self. So whether it's challenge or suffering, it will change and it will not stay there forever. is non-self. When we realize about this, when we face with challenge and face with suffering, physically, we have the feeling of suffering, but we understand that impermanence and non-self is there. So our mind will not be disturbed by this wave, by this challenge, by the circle of birth and death. To be in Nirvana is to be beyond all time and space, all duality, all delusion, and all fear. Nirvana is the ultimate refuge of all life. To understand the third Dharma Seal is to understand that Nirvana is the pure Buddha mind, the truth that lies at the center of all the Buddha's teaching. One does not need to wait for death to experience Nirvana, but Nirvana is always present in everything, every place, and every time. The only thing is that, do we understand it? Do we accept it? And do we practice it and apply it in our daily life? So in this session, I basically introduce a brief introduction of the Three Dharma Seal. Three Dharma Seal is very important teachings in the Dharma. A lot of people try to study about emptiness. But where does this concept of emptiness comes from? When we talk about emptiness, what's the meaning of emptiness? When we talk about sunyata, where does this sunyata come from? So before we want to explore what is emptiness, why don't we look into the Three Dharma Seal? Is impermanent emptiness? Is non-self emptiness? Is Nirvana emptiness? How do we achieve the state of liberation? Can understanding of impermanence help us to liberate? Can the understanding of non-self help us to liberate? And can the understanding of Nirvana help us to liberate? So this is the key things in learning the Dharma. We don't learn the Dharma by doing research, by studying for knowledge. Dharma is not to study. Dharma is to be applied in our daily life. Dharma is supposed to be part of our life, in our blood, and our body, speech, and mind. So if we want to liberate out, we must fully, completely understand the Three Dharma Seal, accept it, and use it in our daily life. So in today's session, or today's class, we talk about the Three Dharma Seal. And in next week classes, we will continue the Three Dharma Seal, whereby I will provide a deeper elaboration of each Dharma Seal. So thank you very much for all of you listening to the teachings or the discussions. And hopefully that I can bring in some inspirations to all of you, and think about the teachings in this Three Dharma Seal, and you make a choice whether you want to apply it in your daily life. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Om Tho Pho.